All right, so this is the strange news segment. I know it seems a little bit cookie cutter to announce it, but this is an interesting one. I saw it online, and I love the pictures. A very happy fellow standing in front of a house. This is Lawrence Ryan. Okay, so Lawrence Ryan grew up in the haunted house, and this is considered Australia's most haunted house. Most haunted house being in quotes. It's an article by Laura Jackal, and it's on the Braidwood Times website. So look, Braid, Braid, and it's from all the way back in 2016. The beauty of online is things never go away. So as you know, I do not pre-read these articles. It's a bit robust, but it should be interesting. I'll give my thoughts as we go. So let's get started. Australia's Most Haunted Home by Laura Jackal. We've all heard ghost stories about old and abandoned houses, but Lawrence Ryan and his four sisters spent their childhood growing up in Australia's most haunted home, the Monte Cristo homestead in Junee. Mr. Ryan's mother, Olive, still lives in the home, which is now a museum, antique center, and hub for ghost hunters from around the world. Built by Christopher William Crawley in 1884. Crawley, very cool name, especially for the paranormal. Look up Aleister Crawley. In 1884, after he amassed a small fortune, the ornate Victorian-era home on a hill was a status symbol for the large religious family and a significant upgrade from their modest brick home. So I want to look this house up. Junee. Just want to see what it looks like. There's no picture. Oh, that's very nice. Oh, I love it. Yeah, look it up. Monte Cristo Historic Homestead in Junee. Junee. It's got these. It's a very standard house. It's something you would see in any Canadian city, in American city. It's just a symmetrical type house, but they just put these wonderful balcony and porch around it. Kind of makes it look almost Asian in style, or maybe like something that you would see like the old the balconies in the French Quarter of New Orleans. So it's worth having a look. The inside pictures are nice too. But continuing on, Mr. Ryan's mother, Olive, still lives. Oh, I'm sorry, right there. Their original modest brick home. Quote. This is Mr. Ryan. My mom and dad purchased Monte Cristo, literally meaning Mount of Christ, after it fell into disrepair due to abandonment and looting in the 1960s. Dad had grown up living by the railway tracks and always dreamed of owning a double-story home. After seeing the decline of the grand homestead, he felt almost spiritual about returning it to its former glory. That's lovely. I personally love that. I mean, that's so great. This is one of the reasons why in Hamilton, the museum group that runs the museums in the city and the old homes, no matter how much they put down the idea of ghosts, no disrespect today, maybe a little bit in the past, the old-fashioned view of ghost stories, I still love them. They should be there. We need them. Any other city, any organization that saves historic homes for future generations, I mean, seriously, support them. Get behind them. Visit. Take part. Hopefully they don't spend their entire time talking about the type of wood that's in the wall, which is a personal pet peeve of mine. But some of them, like Whitehorn here in Hamilton, they tell you family stories. And it's so worth it. I mean, it's really not that expensive. Just go. Even if they tell you the boring stories, go and put on headphones and listen to other people tell a different history about the house. It's kind of a workaround. Feel free to use that. So he wanted to return it to its former glory. This is Mr. Ryan's dad. Mr. Ryan's parents, Reginald and Olive, already had 3 young girls and another on the way when they bought the house from the only surviving Crawley in 1963 for £1,000. I am not going to take the time to convert that. I can convert it today's money, but in 1963, not so much. I assume That is probably very cheap. My own family home, before I was born, my family bought their home in the East End of Hamilton. I believe they paid 30,000 Canadian dollars for it. So even with a conversion and the difference, I think that's pretty cheap. I think that would be probably like 5,000-6,000 Canadian. That's very cheap. It included the rundown main house, the original brick home, and servants' quarters, stables, a wooden ballroom, and acres of land. Oh my God, they got it at a song. That's awesome. I don't fix stuff up, and I would have bought that too. Anyway, continuing, Mr. Ryan quoted as saying, "My dad, a tailor by trade, was a hard worker and only needed a couple hours of sleep per night," Mr. Ryan said. "He worked all day to earn money and then gradually put the home and outbuildings back together in the evenings and at night." That's great he actually had the knowledge to do that. I wish I had that. It was not long after they moved in that the Ryans began to experience some odd occurrences. Oh, here we go. Quote, "One evening when Mum and Dad were driving back to the empty house, they were both concerned about the amount of light pouring out of the windows and doors, considering it had no electricity at the time." That's a real concern. Their first thought was that the vandals were back and they were being burgled. Dad told Mum and us kids to remain in the car while he went to check it out, but on arriving at the front door, all the light immediately went out and they were plunged into darkness. After that first spooky incident, odd things began to happen regularly. The Ryans both heard the footsteps of a woman in heels on a veranda above them, which at the time was full of holes and unusable. They witnessed items being moved around, strange noises, voices, and plenty of creepy and unexplained sensations. In the mid-1960s and early 1970s, ghostly happenings were not something people regularly discussed. Quote, "I knew growing up that my house was different, but it wasn't something we talked about. People would have thought we were weird, and so we just lived with it." It's true. It's back then, that was before Ed and Lorraine Warren. I wonder if Ed and Lorraine Warren, I do think this is true. I think that they kind of helped bring the idea of ghosts in the mainstream, because Ed, even himself, they were both very religious, so religious folks kind of took to them because of their faith. And then Ed becoming a demonologist for priests, that he took part in exorcisms and things that were very difficult situations related to possession and hauntings. Maybe they're the ones who helped bring this, because they were famous in the day. The late 70s would have been, I think, when Amityville happened, and Amityville being, of course, the most popular, spawning many terrible movies from it. Continuing on along. One of the creepiest events that prompted the first medium to be invited to Monte Cristo in 1977 was something that happened to Mr. Ryan when he was just 5 years old. My parents were hosting a party in the ballroom, and I was only little. One of my sisters took me up to bed. Every hour, one of them would pop their head in to check on me. My youngest sister, who was 12 at the time, entered my room to see a bearded man sitting at the end of my bed staring at me. Oh, God. He then turned to give his menacing stare. That is the stuff of horror movies right there. Imagine being the sister just peeking in. It's like, oh, my little brother, he's sleeping. So, oh, but crap. Who was that? So not only is he sitting there, but he gave a menacing stare. Quote, "She screamed and ran to the party to tell my parents that there was a weird man in my room. But when they got there, he was gone and I was still sound asleep. They searched the house and found nothing or no one. She described him as wearing old-fashioned clothes, and they thought it was possible Mr. Crowley, who had been seen in the property a number of times since." So it's possible that it was Mr. Crowley. Quote, "When she finally told me that story when I was 13 years old, it all made sense." Not to mention he probably was scared crapless. "I hated that room and always felt I was being watched. I never slept in the main house again, and I still won't." I'm not sure that would, as a personal I don't think that would scare me away. I think, especially now, right? Especially if it was my home, you want to feel comfortable, right? So you kind of like stake your claim. I think he let fear kind of get over him. Like, I understand when he's 13, he was scared, but to say that he still doesn't, I don't know about that. Anyway, continuing. While the menacing Mr. Crawley has been seen occasionally, it is the reclusive Mrs. Crawley who is seen most often and had been heard telling visitors to get out. Quote, Mrs. Crawley lived in the house for 23 years after Mr. Crawley died, and was rumored to have only left once or twice during that time, so it's kind of a shut-in. Mr. Ryan said, the house was very much her domain. She wasn't, and still isn't, particularly welcoming to visitors. Another ghost often felt in the main house is one of the Crawley children, Magdalene, who died after a violent fall on the staircase at 18 months old. I wonder if that's true history. I think, the way he described it, I think it was probably true history, not a legend. Usually they'll start with some type of legend, or it would be like more detail, more strange detail. Anyway, so Magdalene, a young Crawley girl who died at 18 months old by falling down the stairs. Quote, the rumors surrounding little Magdalene's death include that she didn't fall and was pushed, now here's the legend part, by one of the very disgruntled servants, Mr. Ryan said. Quote, the Crawleys, although upstanding citizens to the outside world, were not perhaps as kind to their own staff. Poor Magdalene could have been a victim of revenge, or could have fallen on her own accord. Either way, many visitors to our house cannot go to the front room due to a sense of overwhelming sadness and fear. I've seen grown men come out sobbing. I don't know about that. Maybe like psychics. But I kind of talked about it on, I think, the last episode, the idea of what makes a house haunted. And here's a good example of that. Whether you believe it or not, there are many occurrences where a certain space holds on to that tragic feeling. And because of it, I mean, it's different when you go into a museum. It's kind of like a lark. But if it's your own home, you don't want to feel that uncomfortable. Continuing. It is also rumored that the upstanding and devout Mr. Crawley had affairs with many of the servants. One of the maids, supposedly pregnant, met her death on the front step of the property after falling from the front veranda. I gotta call BS on that. Let me see the picture. The front veranda is like maybe 2 feet off the ground. I don't know. Somebody tell me if this is possible. So you see the picture of the front veranda. If somebody fell off the front veranda, I assume they mean the first floor, the way they say would have said balcony. Like, I don't know how they could possibly fall. That like they could die from that. Even if they fell off the balcony, I mean, it's not that high. Okay, I call BS on that, but I'm going to continue reading because I'm dedicated. Died from falling off the front veranda. It is unclear whether she was pushed, whether she fell or took her own life, but she has been heard and seen quite frequently, Mr. Ryan explained. Quote, the footsteps that Mum and Dad first heard on the collapsed veranda, I don't know what that means, if that's first or second floor, collapsed veranda are thought to be that of the tragic maid, so they hear footsteps on it. Mr. Ryan, now a professional stuntman, oh, that's a twist. Okay, I'm going to look him up in a moment, don't worry. Mr. Ryan, now a professional stuntman, is still a regular at his mom's place and returns to Monte Cristo most weekends with his partner, Sophia, a medium, to welcome the ghost tours. I love showing people from all over Australia around our home and letting them decide for themselves whether or not they believe, he said. While many people come away feeling unsettled, many others just have a great time. Quote, either way, Monte Cristo is a beautiful historic building that my parents worked very hard to bring back to life. I am still incredibly proud and thankful to be able to call it my home, however spooky it may be. That's a good way to end it. So again, Australia's most haunted home. It's an article by Laura Jackal from the Braidwood Times. And I'm ending a bit early today, so I thought, hey, you know what? I'll use a little saying. I got to look this fella up. Lawrence Ryan. See if I can find him. Stunt man. Is that him? See a picture. Oh yeah, that's him. Oh my goodness. Oh, is that him? Lawrence Legend. Lawrence Legend. That's him. Oh my goodness. This is very interesting. So he is a stuntman. I immediately thought movies. Like he'd be a stuntman. I wanted to look up some of the movies he was in, but he's actually a stuntman, as in motorcycles and cars. So his stage name is Lawrence Legend. He's an Australian stunt motorcyclist. Got his first motorcycle when he was 14 and become a notable stunt performer and world record holder. Let's see what that is. Stunt world record. He has co-written. No, they don't tell you what the record is. Biography of Lawrence Legend. He was one of 5 siblings. His father recalled wanting to be. Oh, his father wanted to be a stuntman too. So I guess he passed that on to his kid. That's interesting. Growing up, learned to spend time playing cowboys and Indians. Uh-oh. It's a little problematic today, but I digress. Riding his BMX bike. That's cool. Lawrence didn't grow up in a normal home with his parents, but in Australia's most haunted homestead, Monte Cristo. We know all about that now. I will quote, "I was born to risk my life and entertain people. Not much scares me. Hey, I grew up in a haunted house, but he doesn't sleep in it." I can't get over that. After leaving school in 1987, Lawrence set about forming his stunt business, Lawrence Legend Enterprises, in 1989 and launched his career. I'm trying to say what he has the world record for. Lawrence has spanned 25 years. Lawrence brings excitement, appealing to all ages. No. Hall of Fame, no. Maybe. If I can't find it, I'm just going to give up. Galleries. If you want to go to his website, it is lawrencelegend.com.au. AU for Australia. Some nice pictures in here. Hey, it looks like a serious fella. Can't knock it. Stuntman world record. I'm sorry. Preparing for 6 world record jumps. I'm sorry. If you're finding this boring, just shut off the podcast. I understand. I gotta find this out. I have no choice here. Australian Legend celebrates 25 years of stunt riding, marks anniversary by performing 6 world record jumps. Performed in the grounds of his child. Oh, okay, that's cool. He actually performed the world record jumps on the grounds of Monte Cristo. So he went back to his childhood home so that the ghosts of Mr. Crowley and Mrs. Crowley can watch him. Maybe they were second parents to him. He was attempting to jump his Harley Davidson over a gunship helicopter, a 10-seater seaplane, 2 double-decker buses lengthways, so that's the long way, a large house, which I assume is Monte Cristo. Did he jump over Monte Cristo? Okay, a locomotive train engine, and the fountains of the homestead. There's images. Didn't work. There's a video. I know nobody wants to hear me watch a video. I'm just trying to look if to see if they featured the house here. No, I don't. This is the kind of stuff I would prepare if I actually read this article in advance. Okay, I'm gonna keep looking. Maybe I'll post on the Facebook fan page, Ghost Guy Daniel, if I find it. I want to see a picture of him jumping over Monte Cristo. I am hooked. I am invested on this house and this guy. I mean, that is a twist I did not expect, to have the guy who grew up in the house to be a famous world record holding stunt daredevil. Let's say Australia's Evil Knievel. So I will attempt to find a picture of him jumping over the house, but for now, have a look at the Monte Cristo homestead in Junee and have a read of the article. You can see there's a picture of him standing in front of it with this snazzy little cool fashion outfit and a cane.